Dental Sports Central will be over our next team projection of this offseason, and it's going to be over the Texas Longhorns, a team that went 7-3 overall in the 2020 season. Not a terrible season at all for Texas, as this team pulled off some good upsets last season, as well as some great wins, which brought them up to a 7-3 record. How will Texas be in the 2021 season is what we're going over here today. We're going to go over a few players this team will be losing, who they'll be returning, also looking at their schedule for the first time this offseason, starting out with the previous 6 games for Texas. And this team down the stretch, once again, played out pretty well. I mean, they beat Colorado in their bowl game 53-25, former Big 12 foe there against Colorado, which was a great win in that bowl game. And, of course, they absolutely destroyed Kansas State. 69-31 was the final score there. So they nearly put up 70 in that game on the road towards the end of the regular season. So Texas, this was a team that put up some great wins once again for sure. Like this team, if you look at their entire season, they kept it very close to Iowa State, which Iowa State was a national contender last season for a good majority of the year before they lost to Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship. So, Iowa State was for real last year, and for Texas here, Texas really was a great team last season. They had a ton of talent, and this team did not get a lot of attention for it. Even though this team did take 3 losses, though, this team, once again, they genuinely did have a ton of talent here. If you look at how they played over the course of last season, they lost to TCU, which that's really what threw them off, I think. If they could have beaten TCU, this team, that was a 2-point loss to TCU. They also lost to Oklahoma in 4 overtimes. 53-45. So this team kept it really close with Oklahoma, which we all know how good the Sooners were last year, especially towards the end of the season when they really started to heat up there. So Texas was a great team last season. They just were on the wrong end for a couple of pretty tough losses there. But they beat Baylor 27-16, beat Oklahoma State. That was a big upset win on the road there in overtime, 41-34. Beat West Virginia 17-13. Once again, they lost to Iowa State by 3. Once again, the Iowa State and Oklahoma games were both super close last season. Texas was very close to being a national contender for sure, if you ask me. But, Kansas State beat them, and they also beat Colorado. First 5 games this team was 3-2. Last 5 games, they were 4-1. So overall, this team did improve over the course of last season. Looking at your roster preview going into next season, there are definitely some interesting adjustments that Texas will be having. They lose their starting quarterback, Sam Ehlinger. He will not be back to the team next season. Of course, he was definitely an underrated quarterback, if you ask me. If you look at his stats over the course of his career with the Texas if you look at him, especially in 2019, he was a great player. He wasn't as good in 2020 stat-wise. He put up 2,600 yards, 26 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, which, by the way, that's an insane touchdown-to-interception ratio there. But he put up a 60% completion rate in comparison to a 65% completion rate in 2019. So he was overall a more accurate quarterback in 2019. But we've seen the potential that Sam Ehlinger has. He does have potential in the future in the NFL, I think. If you ask me about Sam Ehlinger, he's definitely, I would say, an underrated quarterback. But Casey Thompson, it looks like he's going to be likely, or the most likely, to take over at quarterback next season. He's got a decent amount of experience with this team. He put up just over 200 yards in the time that he did play last year, with 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a 71% completion rate in the time that he did play. So Casey Thompson has shown glimpses of potential when he did play with Texas last year. But otherwise, Robinson, he's coming back, top running back for this team last year. He's shown great potential, putting up right around 900 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. Rashawn Johnson is also coming back. He put up just right around 500 yards. Josh Moore, the top wide receiver for this team, is also coming back. So the skill players are looking really good for Texas. As you do return Josh Moore once again. Looking at him last year, he put up just over 470 yards, 9 touchdowns. Great season for him. Brennan Eagles will be the only receiver to leave this team that had a big impact on this team last year. He put up some great stats as well. He put up just right around 450 yards last year. Jake Smith is also coming back, third wide receiver last season. He put up just over 300 yards. As for the offensive line, they lose 1 on there, 1 defensive lineman, 1 linebacker, and 2 in the secondary. So this team does lose 4 on the defensive side, but that's right around average. That doesn't concern me all that much. But will losing Ehlinger have an impact on Texas next season? I really do think at first it will have an impact. Like Sam Ehlinger, he had several years with Texas, and this team hasn't seen much different. But Casey Thompson, once again, he has shown some great potential in the time that he did play last season. Obviously, he only threw 17 times last year, but he put up 225 yards in those 17 passes and 6 touchdowns out of that. So, he's shown potential. He really has. So, Watch out for him next year. He's definitely a player that I'm going to be keeping my eye on going into next season for sure. But is Texas a dark horse for 2021? I mean, this team, I definitely think, they had potential last year to make a run for sure. I think this team had potential to possibly be in the Big 12 championship game last season, but of course Iowa State and Oklahoma were just too good last year. But for 2021, I think this team will be right back in the conversation, especially if the quarterback situation looks good. But onto your schedule, you start off the season against Louisiana. Pretty good team there to start off your season at home. You got Arkansas on the road, Rice, Texas Tech, TCU. You got Oklahoma and Oklahoma State in back-to-back games. You got your bye week then at the end of October. Then you got Baylor on the road. You got Iowa State on the road. You got Kansas, West Virginia, then Kansas State to finish out your season. So you've got to play. I mean, the good thing is here is that you got to play, or you get to play Oklahoma at home. You also got Oklahoma State at home, but you do have to play Iowa State on the road. Iowa State next season is going to be on the caliber of Oklahoma. I can see Iowa State easily being a top 10 team for the majority of next season. You got to watch out for that. Iowa State's going to be a tough team for sure in that matchup. But otherwise, I'd say your October it's pretty difficult there. I mean, TCU should be a very improved team next season. You got them at the start of October. Of course, you got Texas Tech now with Tyler Shuck, so they could be better. All around, yeah, the most difficult part of your schedule, I'd say, is definitely in through October. But otherwise, your November looks pretty good. I mean, you got Kansas, West Virginia, Kansas State, which all three of those games are very winnable ones there. So this team in general, I think, has got some good potential. But looking at the first half of your schedule, Louisiana is going to be a win. I don't see them being near as good next season. They're losing quite a bit. Arkansas is going to be a close one on the road. Main reason for that is because, I mean, we saw Arkansas last season coming out of nowhere, and they played pretty well. Obviously, they don't have Felipe Franks next year, but that still could be a tougher matchup on the road. Rice is going to be a win, so you got 2 guaranteed wins in your first 3 games, although I would not be surprised a single bit to see this team start out the season 3-0. Texas Tech, you got them. I'd probably favor the Longhorns right now, but I do think it could come to be a close game. You got TCU then, of course, on the road. You got Oklahoma to finish out or to start your October with TCU. So Oklahoma, of course, is always that big matchup, that big rivalry game between Oklahoma and Texas. That should be a good matchup this year, especially considering it's in Texas. But as for the second half of your schedule, you got Oklahoma State. That's also going to be a close one. Not sure who I'd predict right there right now. But Baylor's going to be a close one, I think, just because it's on the road after a pretty tough stretch. Iowa State, then you got them on the road. Kansas is going to be a win. West Virginia, Kansas State could both be close ones as well. But I'd say Texas should easily get up to 6 wins next season. I can guarantee you that this team will be in a bowl game next year, which is obviously good news. It's just a matter of how far they can go past that, which my projection for Texas right now is 8-4. I could easily see this team going 9-3, especially if the quarterback situation looks good. But I just decided to play a little conservative right now and just stick around with 8-4 for Texas. Your saying will be 10-2, so that's basically the best that I think Texas could be next year. That is not a terrible record. 10-2, I mean, that would be awesome for Texas if they could get to that point. But the floor is going to be 6-6. So I've got Texas going to a bowl game no matter what next year. It's just a matter of, once again, how far they can get past the 6-win level. But yeah, Texas is a very interesting team next season, though. Once again, with the Casey Thompson situation, and honestly, the quarterback situation in general should be pretty interesting. We got a couple of quarterbacks which will definitely be battling it out for that starting position. But I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments below on Texas. Let me know your record predictions and all of that down in the comments. I appreciate you guys all watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll see you guys all later.